Okay, now the racing white has been applied, and I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but it's a cream white, as I described in the last video. I like it a lot. Well, I don't know. It's just to my eye, it's a more pleasing shade of white overall for a scale model, and it looks good with that. It'll look good with that deep red, I think. You get a nice dark red onto it. I don't know. I have to get the decals out and compare the two reds that I have. I have this red, which is just pure red, and then I have this deeper, well, it's called gloss dark red. So I think this is closer to what I want, but we'll check it out against the decals. I'll break those out, I think, for a video tomorrow. Try to get those out in the sun where you can see them. Maybe peel back a little bit of the protective paper covering on those, so that we can get a good look at least a glimpse of how nice they are. They're just phenomenal decals from Cali Graphics. But for now, this is where the project is. The top coat white is on. Tomorrow, I think, if I have time, I'll mask for the red. We'll remove the wing. It's not glued on yet. We'll just take the wing off. Probably mask that first and spray it first. Get that red border all the way around, top and bottom, and then we'll mask and do the fuselage. And then while I'm waiting for the fuselage to dry, the paint to dry, hopefully I can get back over to the wing and put the registration and the big Gilmore title on onto the top wing and get it finished and maybe clear coated. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I'm just like I said, I try to, when I'm doing these videos, try to talk about the process and talk about the order of assembly, order of battle. But there's all kinds of stuff that can affect timing on this. Here's the windshield template. I don't know if I can get it to. I probably won't be able to get it to sit there, but you get the idea. This is the template we'll use, and so that when all I need to do is lay this over a sheet of acetate, cut out the acetate, and yeah, it's not going to sit up there for me now. But at any rate, this is our that's our windscreen template. So after everything else is done, I'll make the windscreen, fabricate it, paint the framing on it white to match this, and then we'll just glue that into place, and that should be the final step after all the decaling and all the clear coating and all that is done. The last step will be to set the windscreen on. Alright, so this is where we are. The firewall has been painted my NATO black color to support the engine. You see it's a little bit different from the engine color. The engine was sprayed with it, but the engine cylinders and all the cylinder parts were molded in black, so that's coming through the NATO a little bit. On this engine, you see that is NATO black. The underlying plastic was white, so you see there's a slight difference, but it's not enough to my eye to cause me to do anything different. I think it'll be fine. I smoothed out the cowling around the opening where I had cut out the motor part and then reinstalled it. It was a little rough there, but we just sanded it out. Sanded out the rough spots, used a little bit of filler, and cleaned it up with the surface primer. And now that's coated as well. One of the props is painted. This one's painted in the aluminum. The other one is still primer gray. I ran out of my gloss aluminum color, so I'll have to figure out and buy some more paint. Always having to buy more, like 1,000 cans of paint in here, and I never have the right colors. Story of our existence, model builders. Anyway, here we are. You can see that finish came out pretty good, not too bad. The white went on really nice over all the primer and the sanded finish. I got it as smooth as I could. It looks pretty glossy. I'm overall pretty happy with it. You know, there might be one or two places where I wish I maybe could have spent more time, but you can say that, you know, no matter how much time you spend, you know, we can't, I mean, we strive to get as close as we can to perfect, but at some point you got to draw a line. This is the little headrest part that'll go in there after I paint it nice leather brown. Little bits and parts still to put on. There are two aileron push rods, and the aileron push rods come up from the fuselage here into the underwing here, and then through linkage they're attached to the ailerons. So I can represent those with just two pieces of I'll probably use piano wire, or I could use well, I can use just about anything for that. And as well, there should be, I think, two fuel lines. The airplane had two fuel tanks in the upper wing. They were split by a center rib, so there was I don't know how many gallons. I can go back and take a look on my spec sheet. I want to say there were probably 75-gallon tanks, two of them, 150 gallons, maybe more. The airplane with the Hornet engine burned fuel at an alarming rate. I know that it did have two fuel tanks. I just don't know what the capacity on those was. But at any rate, there were two fuel lines then, gravity-fed fuel lines from the tanks that also will need to be replicated from the upper wing into the fuselage. So I'll be drilling 4 holes in the wing and 4 in the fuselage to accommodate whatever materials I decide to use. It could be guitar strings. You know how I love those. It could be solder wire, the finer solder wire, something like this. That's pretty fine. I think it would work for both the fuel line. I think I want to use wound strings, the guitar strings, probably for the fuel lines, since those might have been back in the day typically were wound. They might have been cloth wound, but they, I can fudge it with guitar strings. And then the aileron push rods might need to be a little stouter than that. I might have to use maybe a couple of sawed-off straight pins. I can just take a couple of my T-pins and just nip the heads off, drop them into the fuselage, and then pull them up through the hole in the top of the wing, in the underside of the wing rather. Just drop it in and then set the wing and then lift them up and glue them. Do it that way. That's a pretty simple way to put stuff like that in. So aileron push rods and fuel lines need to go in. Just for as far as detailing goes, a pitot tube on this wing out here on the port wing. The aircraft had landing lights, 2 small circular lights that were cut into the leading edge. I didn't cut the leading edge for that. I could apply something over it. I could use the hole punch and just punch out a couple of silver trim tape discs and stick them on after it's painted red, and then possibly lay over that painted acetate, cut out a larger circle of acetate, and paint the outside of it red to match the leading edge, and then apply that with white glue over the silver trim tape discs. That would probably look okay, so I'm thinking I might just do that. At any rate, you'll see how that turns out. I may do nothing. I may not even put those on. It just depends. How well the red paint turns out, how the overall aircraft turns out. I hinge a lot of the later detailing stuff on how well the outcome is, how good the outcome is. If the outcome is not terrific, then I don't tend to spend a whole lot of extra time fleshing out those little details. If, on the other hand, it turns out better than expected, then I do try to come back in and take care of those things to flesh out the details. So it's just a matter of what it looks like to my eye and what I feel like what I feel like doing. I know that's probably not a great I don't know. Everybody's different. Everybody has different levels of, I guess, what they'll accept, what they want to do, what they don't want to do. It's just me. Mine's kind of a floating needle. It just depends on the outcome at each phase of the outcome, if that makes sense. All right, so here we are with our white overcoat, top coat, and tomorrow or the next day I want to let this cure. I painted it yesterday, so it's been curing all day today, and I'll probably just work on the masks tomorrow, get them all kind of how I want, not apply them, but get them cut out, using paper to determine exactly where I want the lines to be, and then what I'll do is try to mask it either Saturday morning and paint it Saturday as soon as I get it masked. Or the point being, I don't want to put tape on it at night and not be able to paint it until the next day. I want to leave tape on the airplane overnight. My method is to, once I mask the airplane, I want to go right to paint as quickly as possible. I don't want that tape to lift. I don't want anything to happen with the adhesive. If it's going to react with the paint at all, it shouldn't, but I don't want to give it time to especially if it's a hot day. Sometimes that even low tack tapes, where depending on the temperature, can have a different leave more residue behind or lift something off of the airplane, which I just hate. So I don't leave tape on overnight anymore. Once I get it masked, I like to get it painted. So I try to do all the masking in the morning on a day where I have plenty of time just to focus on these projects. So either Saturday, hopefully by Sunday, I should have the red on. Once the red paint is on there, I'm going to let it sit for another couple of days before I touch it again. And what I'll probably do is after the red is on and cured, I'll put a clear coat on, one layer of clear coat, let that dry for a couple of days, then apply the decals, and then again clear coat it again. So it's gonna be a while here. This next finishing phase it's long and time consuming because of the layover, letting everything cure. I try not to work too fast now when I'm painting. I let the paint dry 2 days, at least 2 days. Not like the old days where I used to I used to decal while the paint was still hot. I mean, it was bananas. I do projects in hours. It'd be done in 1 day on something that was just ridiculous. So, I mean, now it's a plastic, but back in those days. Anyway, that was a long time ago. So now we wait. I have more patience. So we're gonna let this cure up. But this is it in white. I don't know how many angles. I still have the tape over the wheels, so you'll have to forgive that. It looks a little sloppy with the tape on the wheels, but you gotta do what you gotta do. And there's our cowman. All right, we'll get back to you later.